kind of debate or group during meditation is the object of meditation, the focus of meditation. I made this point earlier, that normally our senses are drawn towards external objects. And our senses, the five senses of perception and mind, together see, hear, touch, smell, and taste different objects of enjoyment. So when I see an object in front of me, my mind and eyes go together and perceive. And when my mind and ears function together, I perceive the existence of an object which is making a noise or a sound. And when my mind and the sense of taste function together, I enjoy the taste of something that is like that. So mind is constantly being drawn to external objects. Now, the first step in meditation is to draw mind inward. And the first step in drawing mind inward is to prevent senses from going outward. But we cannot do it physically. See, even suppose physically you keep your eyes closed as an attempt to prevent seeing something, you will be seeing that object naked. Even when you try to prevent your ears from hearing anything and keep your ears closed, your mind may be dwelling on the sound that has come from an external object. So physically or deliberately withdrawing senses from the objects is really not possible. So the first step is to draw these senses towards an object which will help us to meditate, which will help us to become more introspective. For that we need a focus, we need an object to meditate upon the fundamental point. Vedantic tradition generally offers two types of objects of introspection or meditation. One is the impersonal, the other is the personal. The personal objects obviously should be God. Now we have to remember, what should be our idea of God? According to Bhagavad Gita, God is the supreme reality, which is compassionate, merciful, which is all-pervading, and immanent and transcendent. So immanence and transcendence and omnipresence, these three important characteristics should be kept in mind when we conceive of a God as an object or as a focus for meditation. This is very important because the characteristics of what we meditate upon will influence our life. If we meditate upon something sublime, merciful, compassionate, then our character also will become more and more reflective. So in Sanskrit it says that yad bhavayati tad bhavati. Whatever we meditate upon, that we do. That's what really happens. In actual life, a student who is an admirer of a great scientist may be always thinking about the characteristics of an ideal world around him. And slowly, unconsciously, he will direct his energy, time and action towards some pursuit which may ultimately help him to become science. So even at the most physical level, we can very easily see. So whatever we meditate upon, whatever we interested upon, whatever ideal, whatever we consider to be the ideal goal for us to achieve, that Samto we feel. Maybe not in fullness, in completeness, but to some extent. So there is Bhagavad Gita present before you, an ideal focus of meditation. In the form of a God who is all merciful, compassionate, and he is present in all living beings. Referring to this, Swami Vivekananda makes a very interesting statement. The difference between an amoeba and a Buddha is one of degree and not of time. How do you understand this? A Buddha is the embodiment of enlightenment, spiritual enlightenment. Amoeba is such a primitive thing. So in amoeba, this consciousness, this supreme reality, this immanent supreme principle is manifesting at a very, very low degree. And in an enlightened man or woman, this consciousness manifests in a sublime, in an advanced. So depending upon the manifestation of this immanent reality, we become great, sublime, more universal, more enlightened. So, Gita in one context says, Ahamatma Gudakesha Sarva Gudakesha Ahamadishta Madhyanta Budanam Antayevata. This comes in the 10th chapter. Will this verse goes here. The meaning is this, and I should explain. The teacher of Bhagavad Gita addresses his disciple asking, I am present in all living beings. Here the word used is not human beings. Sarva Buddhas is the great commentator of Shankaracharya. Sarvesham Bhudana Anta. That's it. Explanation. Meaning is this, I am present in the heart of all beings, not only human beings, but all beings. So this is kind of spiritual, universalism. And then Lord Krishna says, I am the beginning, and the existence, and the end of existence. You know, this sublime idea of God is certainly my ideal object of meditation. This is one way of meditating, meditation. So we have to remember, we have to think of this God as an all-pervading principle. So it is all-pervading, but it is also immanent. So immanence and omnipotence. In that case, one may think that the entire universe, visible, phenomenal world exhausts God. No, it is transcendental. So this is one idea of, one concept of focus of meditation in the Gita. The same idea is put in a different style in the 18th chapter. There Lord Krishna says, I am the indweller in all living beings and residing in all beings and regulating this universe and the regulating principle of this. So here you have to remember very carefully, you have to remember that God is perceived to be the totality of greatness, compassion, mercy, not only in a personal way, but in an impersonal way, as the immanent principle, as the omnipresent principle, and also the transcendent principle. This is one object of meditation. Then there is another way of meditation, and that is much more metaphysical, it's of a higher order. It comes not in the Gita, but in another famous book, Tattwamayananda Upanishad. Upanishads constitute the highest metaphysical literature of Vedantic tradition. So Mandukya Upanishad is one of them. I shall just explain the idea of meditation and impersonal based on this Upanishad. This Upanishad never asks you to accept a God, to believe in anything. So this is possible even for an atheist or non-believer. But the Upanishad asks you to look around and look close yourself. Who am I? Am I this body? Am I this mind? Am I this intellect? And so on. Now, how to understand who am I? The Upanishad says normally our experience, our world of experience takes place in waking state, in dream state, and deep sleep state. So the Upanishad divides the range of human perception, human experience, of human knowledge on the basis of three types of consciousness, three types of human experience. The waking state, the dream state, and deep sleep state. This is common to all these. Now, in waking state, we experience things at the gross level. We walk, we run, we sit, and all these activities are taking place at the gross level. It means mind and external senses, the five senses of perception, and also the five senses of action, like hands, legs, then the organ, the vocal organ by which we talk. All the senses of action and senses of perception are involved in waking state experience, and mind also. Because without the involvement of mind, there cannot be any experience. Now, at the waking state, we are living at the gross level. We are living at the gross level, we are living in a gross level. Everything is visible, everything is experienced in a gross level. External things we perceive. Now there are two entities here, the subject and object. The subject is seer and the objects constitute the seeing. Drashta is a very Sanskrit word for the seer, the experiencer, the subject, the one who walks, the one who drinks water, the one who runs. All these activities involve subjects, the seer, the one who sees. Seer does not necessarily mean the act of seeing alone, the participant, the subject, and also the object. Now, in dream state, we experience something which is sometimes it is in a way related to our waking state experience. Whatever we experience in dream may not be an exact replica of waking state experience, but cannot be completely devoid, different from waking state. In waking state, it may take 5 hours for you to reach New York. In dream state, it may take 3 seconds. In dream state, everything takes place at the mental level. In waking state, it is not at mental level. Physical activities are also involved. So there are differences, at the same time there are similarities. The similarity is this: we can never have any kind of dream experience which is completely unrelated to any of our waking states. It may not be exact repetition, but it will have some connection with some experience that we have in waking. So, Vedantic psychologists point out three differences between waking and dream experience. In waking state, there is a difference with regard to space. You go to sleep here and you may dream that you have reached Europe or New York. So there is difference with regard to place, space. Then time. It takes 5 hours in waking state. In dream state, it splits up. 4 times. Everything takes place at the mental level, the thought. Then in dream state, everything is happening, and in waking state, everything is happening. Growth means, the word growth implies the participation of senses of perception and senses of action, direction, in this way. So there is similarity and also there are. But in dream state also there is an experiencer, a subject. And the experiencer or the seer or the subject of dream experience and the subject of waking state experience are the same. Otherwise, you will not remember that you had a dream, because we remember, we think about dream only when we come outside dream. When we return to waking state, you suddenly think we had a wonderful dream, I saw an elephant. So the seer of subjects of dream state exist in waking state also. That's why memory is made first. If the experiences of subject or seer were different, memory would be different. The Madhyamika goes one step beyond knowledge. It says, it analyzes the psychological dynamics of deep sleep, which is called sushupti. So waking state is, in Sanskrit language, a technical term sometimes used in books, is Jagrut state, Jagrut avastha. Dream state is called Swapna. And in deep sleep state, we experience things, but when we are experiencing it, we are not aware of the experience. After coming out of deep sleep, when you have returned to waking state, you remember that I had a wonderful sleep, experience in deep sleep. Because deep sleep and samadhi are the samadhi, in other words, samadhi is the meditation. So we can include meditation, because meditation and samadhi are independent. Or if you slightly differentiate, you can say deep sleep, meditation and samadhi are the only 3 states of human experience where you get complete rest. At other times, you cannot have the blissful experience of complete. That's why everyone wants to experience deep sleep, because we want to enjoy rest. Rest means we want to forget the external world, and we want to forget the pull and the conflicts of the senses, and we want to forget all about our day-to-day experiences, activities, including memories and interests. If you remember things, you can never have complete, because memory involves not only pleasant memories but also painful. So any kind of memory is a kind of effort. So you will get complete rest in any state where the subject-object difference exists. Because in dream state there is subject-object difference. Though experiences are there, they are only in the subtle state. In dream state, you may be walking through the streets of unconscious. In pitch darkness, your eyes are closed, but still you can see the blazing sun above you and you walking through it. So this light, where does the light come from? Light is produced by mind, but according to Vedantic tradition, mind cannot produce light. The mind borrows life from Atman. That's what it is. That is the concept. So mind borrows life from Atman, and because of this you are able to walk, you are able to run, even in dreams, though you are sleeping with eyes closed with big time. So everything takes place at the mental level. So in dream state we relive, we experience to some extent what we normally experience. But in deep sleep, what happens? Subject, object, different. Only subject is. And deep sleep we enjoy because objects vanish. So we become one with the Supreme Reality. But there is an element of ignorance. This is the technical language of Vedantic avidya. Ignorance. Ignorance prevails in deep sleep. And because of this ignorance, what happens? We are not aware that we are enjoying deep sleep. We become aware of deep sleep only when we come out of deep sleep, and then we return to waking sleep. But there is no doubt that in deep sleep you get a taste, a glimpse of the blissful experience which normally you get when meditation reaches its highest level of perfection, which is technically called samadhi. But it is not enlightened, there is no enlightenment, because if you really get enlightenment, then you won't be the same after deep sleep. After deep sleep, we return to the same status which existed before we were. So, but then Vedanta says, Vedantic philosophy says, in deep sleep also the subjects, seer, experiencer continues. But at the time of deep sleep we are not aware of it. But there is no doubt that seer and experiencer and the subject exist in deep sleep also. That's why when we return to waking state, we are able to feel the restful, blissful feeling. Now, Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishad asks the question, what is the difference between this subject, the seer, the experiencer, which exists in all the three states of waking, dream, and deep sleep, and the objects which are experienced in dream and waking state? The difference is the seer, the experiencer, the subject remains unchanged. There is no change with regard to the subject, the experiencer. Same experiencer experiences everything in waking state, and also in dream state, and also in deep sleep. But objects change, because you don't see the same objects in dream state which you are seeing in waking state. See, you may see an elephant in waking state, but in dream state you may perhaps see an elephant flying in the sky. So there is the two different types of it. Sometimes in dream you see yourself flying with wings out, like birds. So what really happens according to Vedantic psychology, the idea of flying you accumulate and keep in the mind, because you are seeing birds flying. And so the idea of flying is wrongly associated with your own personality in dream state, because in dream everything takes place in the thought life. Senses of perception are not directly involved. You may ask the question, in dream also we run, but and in dream also we see things. So senses of perception and sense of action. For running we need, or maybe you are doing some work with your hands. You need hands. These are senses of action. For seeing, you need eyes, senses of perception. They exist in dream state also, true, but they exist only at the mental level, not at the sensory level. The senses of action also exist in dream, but at the mental level, not at the sensory level. Therefore, everything takes place at the mental level. Vedanta, so according to Vedanta psychology, the subject remains unchanged. The objects change from each stage. Now, whatever changes cannot be ultimately real. In Vedantic philosophy, because Bhagavad Gita is one of the greatest books of Vedanta. In Vedantic philosophy, there are 3 criteria which are essential to decide that anything is absolutely real. You have to use capital letter R. If anything remains unchanged, without any change, in the past, present and future, it is real. Now, dream objects are different from waking stage objects, and both are absent in dream. Therefore, objects cannot be real. But subject remains unchanged. Another criterion which is necessary for deciding something which is really real is that it should be experienced without any change in the 3 states of human experience, waking, dream and sleep. Second criterion. Third one is it should be free from 6 changes. Birth, existence, growth, evolution, decay and death. Everything in this world. Either insect that lives only for a few minutes, moth which lives maybe for a few hours. Right from these insignificant creatures up to the earth itself, which may perhaps live 15 billion years. All these things belong to the time frame. Earth came into existence, we believe in Big Bang theory, maybe 13 billion years. After maybe 1 or 2 billion years, it is equal. So Earth is as transitory, as relative, as the mold or insect which exists for a few seconds or a few minutes. Because they come into existence, it means they did not exist before they came into existence. It means they are not a thing. And then they grow, then they exist, they grow, they evolve, changes are taking place, they decay, then they vanish. Vanishing means they change their name and form. That is when they change. Earth may perhaps after several billions of years, if the temperature rises to tens of thousands of degrees centigrade, it may move to gases, or it may become inhospitable, it may be uninhabitable possibly. So it will change its state and form everything. So anything which changes is only related to history. So all the objects that we experience, that we see, that we interact with in dream and waking states are unreal. In the sense they are only relative. But at the same time, the seer, the subject remains unchanged in waking state, in dream state, and also in dream state. No, Vedanta asks you to meditate on this seer, because we are the seer, the subject, the experience, the one reality. This remains unchanged. And that reality is technically called in Vedantic tradition Atman. That's why in the Gita, the teacher of Gita says, and that supreme consciousness, the Atman, which is the witness of everything, which is the unchanging subject, the unchanging seer and experience behind all this. Now, if you can concentrate on yourself as that Atman, as the supreme consciousness, the external subject, the ever-present subject, the seer and the experiencer, then we will be able to withdraw our senses from all external objects. Because external objects are only transitory phenomena. They are not. And one will be able to meditate upon this external witness in Sanskrit called Sakshi, the external witness. So this Atman is a witness to all that happens during the waking, dream and vision. It will be complete. Ultimately, we are not this body, we are not this mind, we are not anything, we are not Atman, the supreme consciousness. And when you are able to focus on this in your meditation, you will be able to live in a condition of external presence. So external presence. Because only present exists. Neither past nor future. Because the past also we experience only in the form of present. When we have completed that experience, we call it past. But when we experienced it, it was only present. The future also we can experience only in the form of present. So practically present alone exists. So if you say present alone exists, you need not call it present. Because the word present itself is relative. If you use the word present, there should be something different from it. I mean, past should be there, future should be there. So this Atman, this supreme consciousness, is neither, it doesn't belong to either present, past or future. It is a timeless reality. The immanent conscious principle, the transcendent principle, and the omnipresent. If one can meditate upon oneself, if you can meditate upon yourself as the external reality, then you can live in this world and you can be witness of your own activity. You can live in this world, but you can look upon this world itself as a field. The organs are nice. This is the kind of meditation which is highly psychological. Because it doesn't demand any kind of theological conviction or any other theory. A sincere search for truth. This is the second type of meditation that's generally described in Vedanta. Now, to make this meditation more effective, there are a few very important points that we have to do. Very often, when we start the process of meditation, and this is also one sure sign that we are making a sincere effort to meditate. This is the sign. A lot of conflicting ideas and thought currents and tendencies and accumulated impressions will come to the mind. Those who are read Buddha's life, you may better, or from a Vedantic point of view, this is true of all great spiritual teachers. So the temptation of Jesus, this is more important, the temptation meditation, all this, or Buddha's encounters with Maya in the non-personalized superior era. Now, all these indicate the obstacles which every spiritual seeker has to confront when he sincerely tries to. Now, all great Vedantic teachers give one important teaching, very relevant. you must try to establish a link between your meditative effort, the process of meditation, and other day-to-day activities in our life. Very often there will be a barrier between our meditative process and the rest of life. So one may try to meditate 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening, or maybe 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at night. So, but then at other times, we may not remember our spiritual goal, spiritual life. Then what happens? During the other hours, mind goes on accumulating tendencies and impressions which may not be helpful for meditating. So there will be more conflict. So, for example, when we meditate for 2 hours a day, and then out of the 22 hours, we may work perhaps for 10 hours, then what about the other 12 hours? Or even at the time of doing work also, by sleeping, by doing work also, we have to interact with all kinds of experiences, reactions, and all kinds of tendencies, attitudes and different things. During this time, we may consciously or unconsciously accumulate and imbibe certain thought currents and impressions, which may not be helpful for you. So these thought currents, on the one hand, create their own impressions and tendencies. At the same time, when we meditate, we also try to remove these thought currents. So there will be more and more conflict. So what we need is to establish a link of bridge between the 2 hours of meditative life and 8 or 10 hours of our day-to-day activities. So during day-to-day activities also, we must try to make our mind dwell on certain spiritual ideas which would be helpful for meditation. Then more and more our whole life becomes spiritual, and conflicts will get reduced step by step. So on the one hand, we will be able to live in a state of eternal presence when we meditate upon ourselves as the eternal witness. This is possible when you reach at the highest level of thinking. But in the beginning there will be conflict. And conflict should be reduced. So there are 2 ways of reducing conflict. One, go on accumulating positive tendencies which are helpful in spiritual life by positive actions like reading holy books, associating with holy people, or discussing subjects, talking about subjects which are not harmful for meditation, which may perhaps reinforce the positive currents which are essential for meditation. So, and then we enrich and reinforce the positive tendencies and attitudes, then conflicts will get reduced. Because we can never solve the problem. We can only become strong enough to face the problem. In fact, when we normally say, well, I have solved the problem, what really means I have grown stronger, so that problem is no more a problem. That's what really happens. You may resort to several means. Suppose there is a crisis or a problem. We try to solve the problem by acquiring certain equipment, apparatus, or certain we may use certain tools or instruments for solving the problem. And this process makes us stronger and stronger And when we become stronger and stronger, we feel the problem is no more a problem. It means the subject has become stronger, so the object in the form of the problem appears to be weaker. So similarly, when we reinforce and enrich our mind with more and more positive tendencies and impressions, then slowly conflict also will be reduced and meditation will be a natural, a simple process. So establishing a link with one day and go on acquiring positive tendencies and impressions. As I said some time back, every thought, every word, every action will have that impact on the mind. Mind is sometimes compared to the accumulated dirt and filth that you find in the surface of the earth. So afterwards, even a flash thought, if that thought is, if it is a conscious thought, if the thinking is a conscious effort, it will leave the impression as much as a conscious thought, physical. We can never do anything consciously without leaving an impression in the mind. And this impression, this tendency will surface more commonly when we try to meditate. Because meditation is something like an attempt to clean up the lake, to remove the weeds and dust and things which are assimilated in the mind. If you keep the lake intact, there will be no problem. The moment we try to meditate, we are actually beginning the spiritual journey. It will remain towards our own real nature. We are trying to remove the filth and dirt and weeds from the lake. So every meditative process is an effort to clean up the lake of our. So very often, along with this, very often many spiritual aspirants to people, what will he say, what will he succeed. In the Gita, Arjuna also puts a similar question to students. Arjuna asks, what happens to make a lot of effort, but then fall by the way. Before they reach their goal, they may die, or they may have a deviation from their problem. So this is a problem. Does it mean that you are doomed once for all? Lord Krishna says no. The question is put in a very dramatic way. Arjuna puts the question, Ayadi Subhayo Vedu Yoga Sarira Manasa Aprapi Yoga Samsiddhi Tan Tidin Mudikti Tachino Ubayavidrasta China Bhagavanasari Apamishto Mabhabapu Vivindu Brahmasari. This is 37, 38. Very interesting question, Arjuna. If any spiritual teacher should ask, what happens if somebody, ayati means somebody who doesn't succeed? You may meditate, but you don't. You want to lead a good life, make a sincere effort. But sometimes you fall by the wayside, there is a deviation. And then you sometimes you see something different. You feel, I tried something, but I didn't succeed. Maybe. Now what happens? Then Arjuna reinforces his point. He says, don't you think that such a spiritual aspiring will be lost once for all? Like a cloud moving with a strong wind without any place to stay. So will be those people who may not succeed in attaining the spiritual glory in this life. They don't go to be lost, like a cloud, floating cloud in the wind. That's a good question Arjuna Krishna. And Krishna makes a most interesting statement one of the most celebrated statements. This is related to the very fundamental principles of Vedanta. He says, Partha Naiveka Namutra Vinasa Sasya Vidyadi Nahi Kalyana Kurtasya Gurgadi Sthataya. This is the sloka, it's a practice. The central thesis of the Shine. Anyone who makes the least effort, if you meditate for half an hour in your whole life, you may live for 100 years, but you are meditating only for half an hour. You will never die. It will remain in your spiritual than paper. And you remain in fact, in your next life, you can draw your check and you can build up your spiritual consciousness. Because life is not one. It is not that only one life you have got, one chance. If you lose, you are lost. No, Vedanta doesn't apply. Vedanta says existence is in the form of a cycle. We are born, we live, we work, and after that we will get again another chance. And we can start our journey from where we stop in this. That's what we done. So, anyone can practice. Even if it is with a spiritual practice, prayer or meditation, or even a flashing thought, sincere thought, to go beyond this cycle of empirical life, with all its diversity, pleasant experiences and also unpleasant experiences. Even a sincere attempt, either by reading a good book, holy book, or by listening to a good talk, or a discussion, or meditating for holy book. It will not be lost. It will become a great asset which will save you from all problems and misery. What happens is stated here. Lord Krishna says, when you do not succeed in attaining the goal in this life, what happens? You will continue to live in subtle body. And this subtle body will retain all the impressions and tendencies and vasanas, which include the positive tendencies and vasanas we are accumulated by whatever little spiritual practice we have done. And when you are born again, you are able to connect with this spiritual tendencies and vasanas, which you have accumulated. So you can continue your spiritual journey from where you have left the place. So it is a kind of eternal bliss, which one day you reach if you make a sincere effort. There is a very famous story it's a very famous, celebrated story. It comes in one of the classical books of devotional philosophy. It is also a book on Vedantic philosophy. Advaita Vedanta is not just a devotional classic. It is also one of the greatest Advaita classics according to many non-dualistic philosophy, Vedantic philosophy. This is the story of a king, a mighty emperor. When he reached his 70th year, or maybe 80th year, he thought, well, I have enough of this conquest, palace, all this enjoyment. He decided to spend the rest of his life in a forest hermitage, let us say a retreat center of those people. In silence and seclusion, as a retreat. And then it so happened that he was spending his days in a small hut, and right in front of his hut, so there was a dense forest. And one day morning he found a deer, an old deer, she-deer, was running and was being chased by a lion. So this old deer it was pregnant, it tried to cross the stream, and in its effort, it couldn't reach the other bank, it fell and died, and a small tiny deer was floating in the water. This mighty emperor, this king, suddenly remembered, oh, he jumped in the stream and saved the baby deer. This is the whole story. And this baby deer grew up in the old man's furniture. And he looked up the deer. And then what happened? After a few years, he died. At the time of death, what happened was, he was always worried about who will give food to this deer, or who will look after him. Wild animals may chase it to get it. So what will happen to this deer? So the king or the emperor who had left his palace, children, comforts, everything behind to get spiritual enlightenment, became so attached with the deer that he was born as a deer in this nature. He was a very old man, and he knew all these Vedanta philosophy, and he had practiced meditation for decades. But somehow he was so much concerned about the deer that his mind was so immersed in deer, and he was born as a deer in his. And then what happened? In the next life, he did not forget his faith in the previous life. In the previous life, he had done a lot of meditation, a lot of introspection. He had led a very pure, holy life. So that won't be lost. He remembered his past, and he remembered what happened to him at the time of death. He was such a great ascetic, but he was concerned only about the deer to the end of his life. So that was a misfortune. So this deer lived in the same hermitage. It was empty, there was nobody living in that hermitage. But he never went outside the gates of the hermitage. Because he was afraid, he didn't want to come in contact with him. He was always contemplating, meditating, this deer. So in the next life, this deer was born as a great ascetic, as an enlightened, a spiritual mystic called Vedantic. He became one of the greatest mystics of ancient India. And according to some historians, he was associated with the earlier incarnations. He was one of the early incarnations of Acharya, who was the founder of Olema. So what it shows is that whatever little we practice in this life will not be lost anything. So one should undertake the spiritual process as a serious matter, as a matter of urgency. When you feel that the mind is actually fully devoted to the spiritual ideal, then all the energy, all the senses, all the mental impressions will naturally be focused on the spiritual ideal. And that also will help us to meditate more effectively. That's why there is a very interesting passage in this book where Swami Vivekananda speaks about the importance of patience in spiritual life. Swamiji very often, Vivekananda very often used to stress on the need for enthusiasm, zeal and all that. But along with a lot of enthusiasm, zeal and energy, one should also have patience, both should be combined. So Vivekananda here gives the story of a great sage of ancient India. He wants to stress the need for energy, zeal, enthusiasm as well as patience. There was a great sage called Narada in ancient India. Just as there are sages among mankind, great yogis, so also there were great sages among the gods. Narada was a very great sage. One day he was passing through a forest and saw a man who had been meditating until the white ants had built a huge mound round his body. So long had he been sitting in that position. He said, this great ascetic, whose body was covered with white ants, said to Narada, where are you going? It's a mythological story to drive home the importance of patience. Where are you going? This ascetic asked. Narada replied, I am going to heaven. Then ask God when he will be merciful to me, when I shall attain eternal spiritual freedom. Further on, Narada saw another man. He was jumping about, singing, dancing, and said, Narada, where are you going? His voice and his gestures were wild. I am going to heaven. Then ask when I shall be free. Narada went on. In the course of time, he came again by the same road. And there was the man who had been meditating with the ant hill around him for a long time. He said, Oh Narada, did you ask the Lord about me? Oh yes, Narada said. What did he say? The Lord told me that you attain eternal freedom in 4 more births. Then the man began to weep and cry and lament and said, I have meditated until an anthill has grown around me, and I have 4 more births yet. Then Narada went to the other man. Did you ask my question? Narada said, oh yes. Do you see this tamarind tree over there? I have to tell you that as many leaves as there are on that tree, so many times you shall be born, and then you shall attain eternal freedom. The man began to dance in joy and said, I shall have freedom after such a short time. That was his patience. Then a voice came, my child, you will have freedom this minute. That was the reward for perseverance and patience. He was ready to work through all those births. Nothing discouraged him. This is the importance of patience. Now we will have half an hour meditation, and then we will have testimony.
Trying to find something, seek something, but without someone to seek. Sometimes we want something, or how is our mind to operate?
For meditation, for various reasons, those who are interested in meditation as a relaxation technique. Then meditation can reduce anxiety, depression, and many of these problems. But there are higher seekers who want to get enlightenment. Those who want to know their true nature. Who am I? What's the meaning of life? What's the meaning of existence? Seekers generally read holy scriptures and then take instruction from an enlightened person, accept a mantra and practice this mantra. That's the accept of spiritual pursuit. But meditation also can be just a relaxation technique, just to get peace of mind, or just to go beyond the consciousness of empirical mundane religious. For them, they can accept one verse or one statement from a holy scripture and meditate upon the meaning of the scripture. It is sometimes called Sravana Manana Nividhyasana. Sravana Manana. Sravanam here necessarily, it need not necessarily mean hearing. They can read, grasp and read and understand the sacred statement from any holy book, understand its meaning and deeply contemplate the meaning of that verse. It's called Mana. And then at the higher level they reach a higher level of identity, the meaning of that verse. It's called Vidya. So what are we trying to seek? What are we trying to get through meditation? It depends upon the level of spiritual aspect. But anyway, I can give one important reason why one should meditate. Just to reduce the tension, anxiety and other problems associated with daily life. So that meditation should be. That anyone can practice. Not necessarily as a spiritual person. For spirituality is the highest goal that one can achieve through meditation. But even to reduce anxieties, tension, stress associated with modern life activity. So that also meditation should be. To raise your consciousness to a higher level, higher than the mundane empirical level, so that we become mentally and psychologically better equipped to face the life situation in a good way. Highest level, the meditator wants to know who am I. That's the highest philosophical and spiritual point of view. Am I this body, this mind, this soul, enjoying different things, not always enjoying, sometimes facing painful experiences. Am I something beyond all this? This is a high from a higher angle. They can accept the form of meditation on the impersonal object. We already mentioned the witness method sometimes, based on one vision. It is the various levels of application are useful.
In the Krishna is clear that you can in the discussion of meditation, he seems to stress that the is for most people easier and also more fun. So based on what you were saying earlier, you're meditating now on this person, and obviously in that highest aspect. And then you're taking on the character of that person, combination of that. You're linking the personal life with the attachment life. And you're answering the question of God. Because you are God. So in this personification,
there is one serious problem in explaining the idea or the concept of meditation and the person in a Western context. The reason is, in the monastic belief, we always think about existence as a single existence, very single life. And again, so long as we accept only one life, we cannot rule out the possibility of many people becoming eternally doomed without achieving. That's the one problem. So, But that is not the view of Bhagavad Gita Vedantic tradition. So in Bhagavad Gita and generally Vedantic tradition, they combine the idea of a supreme creator God, his compassion, his mercy. Not as a God who creates this world and stays away from his creation, but as a creator God who is not different from his creation. But the creator God is residing within every living being, within every particle of his creation. That is a very important principle. So unless you accept the immanent and the omnipresent and the transcendental aspect of the personal God, you cannot meditate really, you can only pray. So long as you believe that creator and creation are two different entities, you can think, contemplate and pray to. You cannot meditate. I shall give one classic example. In one of the important classics, devotional classics, Bhagavad Gita, there is a story of a boy. I won't go into details of the story. This boy had he was scolded and he was greeted by his father, a 5-year-old boy, and he came crying to his mother. Mother said, all children should be so pray to God, meditate. A simple advice given to him. And the boy started journey to the forest. And there he came across Narada, the great Christian, who gave him one mantra, one sacred mantra. And this boy went on reciting this holy name and started meditating. After 2 months, he started meditating not on the meaning of the mantra, the sacred word, but rather on the name and the form of the reality, the form of Vishnu. Vishnu is one of the personal deities of Vedantic. And then when he reached the 6th month of meditation, he suddenly found the form of the Lord on whom he was meditating, whom he conceived as an indweller in his own heart, suddenly vanished. And he was perturbed. When he opened his eyes, he was standing in front of him. Then there is a prayer, there is a famous hymn in Sanskrit. There he says, the one reality whom I was meditating upon, and the one reality who is standing in front of me, I am going down to him as well. Now just imagine, he first meditated on the meaning of the mantra and was praying. Then ultimately the meditation became an introspective process. He started meditating on the same personal God as being seated in his own heart. So there you find the immanence which is characteristic of the impersonal, and the form which is characteristic of the personal merged into one. So prayer is possible for an extraterrestrial God, a God who creates his world and stays away from creation. But real introspection and meditation is possible only when you think of a God who can have a personal dimension, but it is also the immanent reality residing uniquely. So, now, but Krishna in the 12th chapter says, those who have got a strong sense of body consciousness cannot begin the spiritual journey, the spiritual effort with meditation and the impression. Because so long as you feel you have this body, you have to believe the reality of the world of which you are a part. And if you believe the reality of the world, then you can think of only a God who is the creator of this world in this way. Normally that will be the highest concept. But then along with that, if you read the scriptures, you can also believe this this God, whom right now I look upon as a creator God, he is infinite. In his impersonal aspect, he is invariant reality. So God is both personal and impersonal, depending upon our own education, our own process. In fact, our understanding of God is very often it depends upon our own spiritual education. When you evolve spiritually and reach a very high level, then you cannot just think of a God who creates his world and stands apart from it and who supervises it. At a higher level, we can only think of a God who is in his personal aspect is the embodiment of compassion, mercy, and in his personal aspect, as in his infinite aspect, he is immanent, omnipresent, and also transcendent. But Krishna makes one point clear. Klesho Divagaras Klesham Advait Tasat Kachedasam Advait Kati Vedis Dukkham Dehavadhiti Avati. What he says is, Arjuna really wanted to start with meditation on the impersonal. But Arjuna was a man of the world, very ordinary. He was a soul. So Krishna makes his point very clear. It is not possible for ordinary people to believe that they are no more than physical. To believe that need to practice in meditation and meditation. So even when you are praying to God, you have to keep in mind this God is not just personal, you cannot limit the infinite. See, the whole problem is we cannot intellectually fully comprehend the reality of God. God is beyond human comprehension. It is not that God is unknowable. That's different. It is not chance and knowability thing in itself. What it implies is this, God can only be experienced. As the impersonal reality, God can be understood only through the medium of experience, in infinite transcendental ignorant act. But in a personal aspect, you can break it. That's why people who sincerely pray. Look at, think of a man like Gandhi. Gandhi speaks so much about God. And when Mahatma Ji thought of a personal God, he looked upon him as merciful, compassionate, the God of the entire creation. Not God of one particular religion or particular religious personality or particular group. Gandhi is thought of the three capital letter Jesus. Not God of any particular group. God as a supreme life. That concept is possible only if you combine the personal with impersonal. Impersonal in its higher nature. As you advance further, you understand God as the But for a beginner, for somebody who believes on a spiritual God, you have to think of yourself as the servant of God, worshipper of God. Remember, God always in this sense, no? I'm not using the word God as a God of the Hindus, the Christians, the Muslims, the Jains. No. I'm speaking, I mean a God who is as accessible to non-believers who don't believe in Him as to believe. God doesn't insist that you should believe in Him. If His survival depends upon your belief in Him, then we can't say He's infinite or that. God's existence is not dependent upon our belief in Him. So He is God of even those who don't believe. So that's why in the Vedantic text, you find this stress on purity of life, truthfulness, integrity, all these qualities are for a real devotee. Faith is never stressed in any of the Vedantic. Faith is never stressed. Faith in the reality of God, but not taking this particular detail in all this. This is Christianity of Vedanta. So that's why even when you pray to personal God, those who have read the scriptures and through scriptures have got the idea of the impersonal can keep in mind this personal God in his higher dimension, the impersonal reality, the immanent, the omnipresent, the transcendent. What kind of faith is not partition? The reality of God is real. The reality of the truth, but constructed, theologically conceived doctrine of God. That's the problem.
God is there. Krishna makes it very clear it's not going to happen. No, I'm saying when they're selecting the side, who's going to be on which side, and they the Mahabharata, and Krishna makes it very clear he's not going to fight. So, but whoever he selects. So if you got to select, then this incident takes place. Krishna's giving this message, in which he's talking about the impersonal God. He himself is the embodiment of God. You see, and then of course Arjuna finally says, I have to see this. I've got to, and then he shows him, of course, he's petrified. And then he says, now I'm showing you something that no one ever sees. He says, now what has he done? And then we go back. I mean, it's whole process.
Yes, now, in the Mahabharata, we say that Krishna says that he was not going to find, let's say, the person was going to take an active part in any of these, in either side, to find the right and the right. But then Krishna makes one time, and he repeats the answer is the negative dharmas pravete. So wherever there is virtue, truthfulness, difference, that only makes. The statement was made by Gita in Bhagavan Vivekananda, not the customs. But Krishna is not going to take another side. But in this doctrine, those who uphold dharma in the totality of great virtues like truthfulness, nobility, and all these great virtues, dharma stands for all the great human virtues that we can think of, we preserve this earth, this life. That is dharma. Now, wherever dharma exists, that's I will do. And then Krishna himself gave his own army to Duryodhana. He gave an option to Duryodhana, whom do you want, me or my army? Duryodhana didn't want Krishna, only one man. So Duryodhana wanted Krishna's huge army. And Arjuna, on the other hand, did not want Krishna's army. He wanted only Krishna. Because Arjuna understood Krishna is the embodiment of dharma. Where dharma exists, victory. That's the idea. So that is why when Arjuna said, I am not going to fight, see, Evam Kya Rishi Krishna Gura Kesha Karandava Na Yosha Idhi Govindam Kya Krishna. So remember one point we made here. The word fight is used to be arena. Arjuna was a soldier. When Arjuna said, I am not going to fight, and Krishna asked him to fight, but it's not true that Krishna instigated Arjuna to fight. That point is clear. The idea is this. Arjuna said he was not going to work. And the situation was this. Arjuna had come fully armed to the king. And he was confronting a huge army of walking the people. Arjuna himself says, he uses the word Acharya, means Advaita means art for criminals. That term is defined in Sanskrit and Indian. People who molest women folk, who kick children, take away wealth, and arm to the teeth go about killing innocent people. And all the terrible crimes that you can think of, Akmiro, Girdeseva, Shastravani, Dhinandara, Kshetradara, Mahapati, Sadeviti, Akadana. 6 types of hard crimes, terrible crimes. Those who commit such crimes are called Advaita. Arjuna says these fellows are criminals. And it was Arjuna's duty, after coming there fully armed to the teeth, it was his duty to protect the poor people, the women folk, the children, the innocent people from these criminals. And Arjuna says, I will do it 5 minutes, they are also criminals. That point should be very clearly understood. Because Arjuna fully recognizes that these people with whom he was supposed to fight are the worst types of criminals. The word we use it today. It is Nigatya Dhartarashtrannaka Predisya Janagana Apapam Evasi Rasma Hatta Vedanti Atatayam. He will use it the word. So Arjuna himself recognizes them as hardcore criminals. He says, no, I am not going to fight. Not that he wanted non-violence. He wanted to avoid duty. If Arjuna could get the kingdom without fighting, he could have welcomed it. He was only opposed to working for, as the policeman says, I won't protect the poor people from innocent people from robbers. What do you ask the policeman? You ask the policeman something. That's what Arjuna was. So that point should be understood. In Gita, when you read, you often find this word. Arjuna says, I won't fight. What he said was, he was a policeman. So, and there are criminals confronting him. And he said, I won't fight. He did not say that I don't want any of these things. He was only reluctant to do these things to the partner. He said, I won't do nothing. The teacher which I will do, the student which I will study. That's enough. That point should be understood in this particular point. Ultimately, he said, Krishna showed in his glorious form only to make Arjuna understand that even if you don't do your duty, nothing, and you cannot, your inaction will not affect the outcome of it. So that's why Krishna showed him the past, present and future. What was the past? The point is, Krishna is portrayed in the classical books as the one who can see the past, present and future as a single dimensional experience. That's why he was not affected by anything. Krishna was one who never wept, never cried, never lamented, and never overjoyed. Because he knew that if there is a pleasant experience, he knew it will not last for long. So he was not. If there was an unfortunate, even he was not grieved because he knew that also will not last. So this I will get. So the point I want to stress is that in Gita, the personal is described for the beginner. Because the path we should choose is not a matter of our choice, but a matter of our own evolution. Where we stand, accordingly we must choose it, not what we prefer. That is how. Where we stand, we have to go to the next stage of spiritual. For that, so our path depends upon our evolution and not our choice. Our choice may not always be to do it. Oh, yes, I understand. Why Arjuna did not fight? Yes. In the 28th verse of the first chapter, Arjuna begins his dialogue. That's how Arjuna begins his dialogue. You can see Vishwemam Sujanam Krishna Vipsum Samavastidam Srivanti Mamadatraman Upanishadari. That's how you the translation is. I see my own relatives and family members standing around me, looking to fight, and my weapons are slipping through my fingers, I am becoming very bitter. All these are 28 versions. Now, this is what Arjuna says. But then, Arjuna makes a statement. The word, this is Acharya. The Acharya is the word, very important word in the Gita. It comes around the end of the first chapter. He says, these people are hardcore criminals. He recognizes. And he recognizes that because of them, he has suffered. As I tell you, the word Adakari. Asmido Virga Shaiva Sakrapani Janapaka Shekragara Apahastaka Sadayati Adakari. This is the definition of Ananda. Asmin is somebody who sets fire to houses. And Virga means somebody who is poison. And Sakrapani means somebody who comes to attack you, arms the thief. And Dhanapaka means somebody who takes away your wealth. Shekragara means somebody who takes away your vanity, everything, and who kidnaps your life. He is describing the wonderful attributes of his enemies, adversaries, with whom it was his duty to fight. So many commentators have explained this point. This is very relevant. Commentators have written long commentaries on this point. The commentators say that Arjuna was very much aware that those who were facing, those with whom he was supposed to fight, were hardcore criminals. Though some of them were his relatives, they were all hardcore criminals. This is a very important point, remember. And therefore, you know what happened? And then Arjuna again says, as a Kshatriya, as a soldier, it was his duty to confront his enemies and protect the poor people from them. So he was making a statement that he was not willing to do his duty. Commentators have written long commentaries on this. Arjuna was not specifically saying, I am not going to fight. And it's not that Krishna was instigating me to fight. Because Arjuna was saying that he was not willing to do his duty. And the duty was very crucial. Arjuna was facing a group of criminals who had insulted his own wife in open court. That is one of the most tragic events episodes in Dharma. And this man says, now it's my duty to fight. No, I am not doing it. So Krishna doesn't ask him to fight. Krishna is very courageous. You want to solve the problems of action by running away from action. Arjuna felt this fighting is a terrible thing, and it goes, and you know that according to some commentators, some of the enemies with whom Arjuna was supposed to fight were much greater warriors than him, Karna, Drona, and Bhishma. They were far greater than Arjuna. So Arjuna was instinct a little fear. That is also stated. But then he didn't want to say, I'm afraid I am not going to fight. He was saying, I'm not going to fight, I will not fight with anything. Now Krishna doesn't ask Arjuna, fight. What is it? Do your duty. Do your duty. That's one. So, that duty, and this Arjuna, at the end of the 18th chapter, doesn't say, I'm going to fight. You know what he says? Nashto moha smridambadha prasada maya akshira sudosmi veda sandena tarishu vadanandara. The last sentence which Arjuna speaks with you guys, tarishu vadanandara. Literally it means, I shall do my duty as instructed by you. That is the last statement which Arjuna made in the 18th chapter. And end of the chapter. So this point should be understood. Arjuna was trying to run away from action, thinking that the problems of action can be avoided by inaction. Krishna told him, you can never solve the problems of action by avoiding action. By doing your duty immediately, you can avoid the problems of action, not by running away from action. That point, Krishna taught. That's only.
So the other thing was to add what you were saying about the criminal practice. A lot of losing the dog, like that they have lost memory. meaning they lost the point of memory of what the Dharma people did. So, that's what he keeps saying to Arjuna, you must remember this is what you did. As you were saying.
Yes, what Krishna tells him is this, there are important statements there. One point he says is, Karmani Avadya Adhyaya. So Karmani Avadhyaya to Nam Haleshu to Gajana Master Santushti Akarmani. An important point he makes is, you should never try to solve the problems of action by running away action. You should not be attached to action, but you should never be attached to inaction. So, in fact, all commentators agree on one point. Arjuna's main problem was that he was full of desire. He was, the Arjuna whom you find in Gita, this chapter, was not a spiritually enlightened. That point should be remembered. Arjuna was very much a man of this world, full of desire, full of attachment. He wanted to enjoy kingdom comfort, but he was not willing to work for it. And that's why Krishna even calls him as he spoke to Arjuna, Karmendriyani samyagnya de aste manasa smaram indriyartha nimodharma mithya acharya saviti. Mithya acharya means hypocrisy. See, Arjuna was not like Buddha, Jagadharga, or great spiritual personalities who are not interested in spiritual, material content. Arjuna was not a man of renunciation, like Buddha, or Vardhamana or Jesus. Arjuna was full of desire. He wanted to enter. But he speaks the language of a youth. That's Krishna calling you a hypocrite. The sloka is Karmendriyani samyagnya, that's sloka. Mithya dharma means you are a hypocrite. You are talking like a wise man, which you are not. So, suppose, see that point, even Gandhiji in this group, Anasakti Yoga, that is Gandhiji's commentary on Gita, Gandhiji makes a point very clear. Gandhiji talks about non-violence, he makes a point clear. Arjuna was under the impression that inaction was non-violence. Lethargy, inaction, running away from your duty, responsibility was ahimsa, which physically somebody may do that. And some of, the idea of ahimsa should be understood in its spiritual, in its psychological, as a human attitude to oneself and to